Good evening. Be'ezus Hashem, today's daf is Masech Avodah Zarah daf Samach Beis 62, and we will begin from daf Samach Beis Amid Aleph, the new Perek Hamishi. So we're discussing over here Yayin Esech. Now we know that Yayin Esech is Yayin, that wine that the goy for sure used for Avodah Zarah. He poured it for Avodah Zarah in front of an Avodah Zarah. So therefore, the wine becomes Asr Bahana. You cannot benefit from the wine. You cannot eat the wine. You cannot benefit from the wine. You can't smear it on your body. Any type of benefit is Asr Bahana. Now, what happens if a guy gave you that wine as a gift? Are you allowed to sell it? So of course not. Not only that, if you sell it, the money that you receive in exchange from the sale, you have to get rid of. You have to totally destroy. You can't benefit from that sale. So now, what this Mishnah is dealing with, you're not benefiting directly from the wine. You're benefiting in a derivative way. In other words, you're doing something, but not directly benefiting from the wine. You're benefiting from the fact that the wine is there, that the goy has wine for you. So what's the question with that benefit? So let's see, what's the case? So the Mishnah begins, Hasoiches apoil. A goy hired a Jewish worker. Okay, a goy hired a Jewish worker. Hi, Alan. We just began. We're in the fifth parak. Here, we just began. So we're discussing over here, of course, Yayin Esech is also Bahanoah. And if you sell Yayin Esech, if you sell, so God gives you a gift of wine and you sell it, the money that you receive in the sale, you have to get rid of. But our Mishnah is dealing with a side benefit from the Yayin Esech. In other words, you're not benefiting directly from the Yayin Esech. So the Mishnah begins, Hasoiches apoyel. If someone hires a worker, a guy hires a Jewish worker, lases ima b'yayin esech, to do something with yayin esech. For example, the guy hires him to carry barrels of yayin esech. So the problem is that the Jew is benefiting the fact that there is yayin esech, that there's this concept of avodah zarah in the world. So the Mishnah says, Schari asa, the payment, the wages are going to be aser. And the Gemara, and obviously it's aser midrabanan. It's not like you're benefiting directly from the avodas, from the yayin esech itself, like your the yayin esech itself, but it's a side benefit that you want the yayin esech to be around. So the Rabbanan said that once you get paid, you have to throw the money into the garbage. You have to get rid of it. But what happens? The guy hired the Jew to do another work. Let's say carry barrels of oil. And then he says, "Oh, Afal Pisha Amalai." He says to him, "Havali Chavi Yayin Esa Mimakal Makam." Just carry this barrel of Yayin Esa from place to place. So he wasn't specifically hired to carry the barrels of wine. So then Schari Muta, then your wages are permitted because he's basically was hired for a different work. He was hired to carry oil. Then the Mishnah says, Hasoiche es hachamor. If a goy, this is now the goy is renting a donkey belonging to a Jew, and he says to the Jew, "I'm renting your donkey lahavi aleha yayin esech because I want to carry yayin esech on the donkey." So you're benefiting from the rental fee that you're getting, that the goy is using your donkey to carry yayin esech. So this is yayin of avodah zarah. Schara also, then the wages are prohibited, but the rental fee, you have to get rid of it. I mean, schari leishav allowed, but let's say he rented the donkey to travel, to sit on the donkey. So afal pisha aniach goy legina, even though if he brings along a little jug full of yayin esech wine, but that's not the main reason he rented the donkey from me. He rented the donkey to travel from place to place. So if he puts in the cup holder his yayin esech, schari mutter, the rental fee is permitted. So now we go into the Gemara. My time is schar. Why would the schar, your wage, if you're working for the goy, specifically for yayin esech, why would it be aser? In other words, why would it be? The Gemara originally probably thought that it's aser midaraisa. So we're going to say like this. Ilema, you're going to say, Hoyel v'yayin esech aser bana, since I know that yayin esech I cannot benefit from. In other words, I cannot use yayin nesach, that yayin that was for sure used for avodah zarah. I cannot use it, let's say, to anoint my body with it. So it's also bana. So therefore, schori nami also. So therefore, I cannot have a wage come from yayin esech, from doing something for yayin esech. I cannot get it paid for that. Okay, because that's similar, like benefiting. So if that's the case, then that rule should apply to anything that's aser bahana. Says the Gemara, Hare Orla, Uklaya Kerem. Orla and Klaya Kerem, Dasurim Bana, are two types of items that which are aser bana. Utnan, we learned in the Mishnah, if you have, let's say, fruits of Arla, Umacharan, you sold it. You aren't supposed to benefit, but you sold it. Now you have money. The Kiddush b'demeim, and you Makadish a woman with that money. So Mukudashes, the woman is now Mukudashes, because even though you benefited by selling the Arla, that money doesn't take on the Isser Hana, and therefore you could be Makadish a woman with it. And certainly that would apply that if you worked for Arla, you worked for somebody who has Arla, and you're getting paid for that, that money would be your money. So therefore, if you're comparing Yayin Nesach, which is also Bahanoah, to Arla and Klai and Kerem, then why is the wage that you make from working in Yayin Nesach also Bahanoah? Says the Gemara, Ella, Yayin Avodah Zarah has one thing more than Arla and Klai and Kerem. Hoyel v'toifis as dam of Kavodah Zarah. It transfers the money, transfers the tumah, the Issa transfers to money. Whereas Arla, I could sell, right? I could sell, and the money is not Arla money. You can Mekadesh a women. But if you sell Yayin Esach, the money that you get from Yayin Esach, that money has the din of Tumach's Avodah Zarah on it. And therefore, you would have to get rid of that money. So if I sell Yayin Esach, I have to get rid of the money. So that's why if I get hired for carrying Yayin Esach, I also have to get rid of my wage. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, Vare Shvias, Shemitah food, right? The Toifeses as the mel. Shemitah, if I sell Shemitah produce, which I'm not allowed to, so the money that I receive gets transferred, has Kedushas Shvias on it. In other words, what's the difference if my money has Kedushas Shvias on it? At a certain point, Shemitah fruit has to be destroyed in a certain time of the year. So that means that that money also has to be destroyed. So Shemitah has similar properties, similar characteristics, I should say, to Avodah Zarah. Just like Avodah Zarah, when I sell Yayin Nesach, the money has the tumah of Avodah Zarah. And so also when I sell Shemitah fruit, produce, the money that I receive has Kedushas Shviyas on it. Now let's see what happens by wages by Shemitah. Utna, we learned in the Mishnah, if a guy hires a worker and he says on Shemitah, Heilech dinner zeh, here's a dinner, L'koitli boy yarakayim. I want you with this dinner, get me vegetables. So basically he's saying to the worker, you take a dinner's worth of vegetables, give it to me, and keep the dinner. So therefore, it's almost as if the poyel is selling the vegetables to his boss, basically. So schare aser, there is a wage that's aser, because it's phrased as such as the worker is selling vegetables, Shemitah vegetables, in exchange for a dinner. But what happens if the owner says, I'm just giving you a dinner, just bring me back some vegetables. I don't care how much amount of vegetables you bring me back. Then schare mutter, then the wage is mutter, because you're allowed to get hired to work in Shemitah produce. So that's what he's doing. The worker is coming to the field, carrying vegetables and bringing it back to his employer. And we see the wages mutter. So therefore, by Avodah Zarah, if I work for a goy with his Yayin Nesach, why is my wages aser bahana? Answers the Gemara, Omar Rabbi Yahu, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Knasi shekonsu chachamim b'chamarim u'v'yayin nesach. That this was a knas, a penalty that the chachamim instituted just by yayin nesach and chamar. We'll see what that means. Yayin nesach means because as a avodah zarah has another problem to it. Not only am I allowed to benefit from it, but I'm also supposed to get rid of it. I'm supposed to destroy it. I shouldn't be somebody that wants the avodah zarah stuff to be around. And therefore, if I'm working for the goy in his Avodah Zarah stuff, it's evident that I want the Avodah Zarah to be around, his Yayin Nesach to be around, so I could get paid. So the Chacham said that this is a knas, not a good way to make a living, and therefore, midrabanan, your wages are aser. So that's just by Yayin Nesach, it doesn't apply by Shemitah. Now, b'chamorim also we have this concept. What is chamorim? By donkey drivers. So Yayin Nesach, I said you're not allowed to take wages. Hoda Amrin, we just explained that, and that's our Mishnah. You're not allowed to take a wage working in Yayin Nesach. Chamorim Mahi, what's a donkey driver? Where's a donkey driver not allowed to take a wage? The Tanya, because there was a brisa that says hachamorim shoy oisim b'locha b'perish v'yis. At the chamorim, a donkey driver who travels, he's like the ancient truck driver, okay, who does work with fruits of Shemitah. He transports them. Schar and Shvias, his wage has a din of Shemitah. So this is the brisa. Now we're going to try to understand the brisa, and the second way to understand the brisa will explain that there's a knas also by Chamara. My schar and Shvias. What does it mean that their wages are Shemitah wages? Ilema does it mean I can take, if I hire a donkey driver to transport my perish shvius, I can pay him with other fruits of shvius. Is that so? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to pay a truck driver with perish shmita because he's transferring shmita fruit? The Torah only gives you one thing to do with fruits of shmita. You can eat it, but can I use it to pay a debt? I can't. If I owe a donkey driver money, I'm not allowed to pay him with fruits of shvius. So what does it mean? The Ella, what it means to say is the Kodesh Charim B'Kedusha Shvius. If I pay him money, if I pay the donkey driver money, then his money, his wage, has to be has the Kedusha of a fruit. And therefore, he would have to destroy it at a certain time during Shemitah year. So, Umi Kodesh, does his money have any holiness to it? But Tanya, we learned in a brisa, which we just discussed. Someone says to a worker, someone says to a worker, hey, here, the brisa, it's just reversed, but it's the same brisa. That you're allowed to hire a worker to work with you in Shemitah to bring you some fruits in the field, as long as you're not telling him, I'm paying you for that fruit. You just tell him that here's a dinner and go collect me vegetables. And his wages are permitted. So we see you're allowed to hire, if you hire a worker to transport vegetables, his wage has a din of he's permitted money. So what did the brisa mean when you hire a donkey driver to transport your Shemitah fruit? The Shemitah fruit has a din like Shemitah. His wage has a din like Shemitah. What does it mean? So first teretz was Amar Abai explained this brisa. You're allowed to pay the donkey driver from the fruits of Shvita. Your question was, how could you pay a donkey driver? The Torah tells us that you can only eat the fruits of Shemitah. You're not allowed to pay your debt with the you're not allowed to pay a wage that you owe somebody with Shemitah fruit. Answers the Gemara, the Avina le b'tzad heter. There's a way to get around it by giving it to him in a permissible way. To the Tanan, like we learned in the Mishnah, a person should not tell his friend. But this is by Maisa Sheni. Maisa Sheni, you're also supposed to eat in Yerushalayim. You're supposed to eat the Maisa Sheni fruit in Yerushalayim. But I can't pay my cleaner's bill with my Maisa Sheni fruit. So what do? A man shouldn't say to his friend that he owes him money, or whatever he owes, or we go to Amud Beis, Halali Paris Halal Yerushalayim Lechelik. Go bring up the fruits of these fruits to Yerushalayim, and your wage will be that you'll be able to eat these fruits. This is my Ma'aseh Sheni. I'm giving it to you. I don't want to go to Yerushalayim. You bring it to Yerushalayim, and your reward will be that you'll be able to take some of the fruits for yourself. Because that looks like I'm paying him for transporting it to Yerushalayim. Aval oimeloy, you're allowed to tell him. Halam la'oichlem l'shtoishim Yerushalayim. Bring it up and you drink it yourself. You eat this Ma'aseh Sheni fruit and drink this Ma'aseh Sheni wine in Yerushalayim. This is all yours. And then you distribute it as a free gift to anybody. So therefore, same thing over here. So that's a permissible way to pay somebody his through shmita, through Ma'aser Sheni fruit, and you can apply that trick when you want to pay your donkey driver. You don't tell your donkey driver, here's your wages in Shemitah fruit, take it. But you can tell him, here, have some free Shemitah fruit and distribute some to your friends. And don't like indicate that you're giving him as a payment. And when you don't do that, you don't violate the Isser of paying with Shemitah fruits your outstanding debts. That's one teretz. Rava says no. Loilam, you're paying him in cash. And you're going to tell me the Kodesh B'Kedusha Shmidis. And his wage now has a din like Shemitah fruit. And he has to destroy the fruit, he has to destroy the wage at a certain time during Shemitah. Because just there's a din of beer it has a din of Kedusha Shvius, it has the holiness of Shemitah fruit. And therefore you have to treat it such, with all the halachas of Shemitah. You told me a worker that the kakashalach, but you had a question, poyel, a worker, when you pay him to do a small job for you, his wages are permitted. So why is a donkey driver's wages are usher, have the din of kedusha shvius. So poyel don't know enough ish egre. Poyel, little worker for a small gig, he doesn't make so much money. Like Kanasuch Rabbanan didn't make any penalty. Chamarim Denofish Igrayu, a long-term a donkey driver who takes a lot of profit, so therefore he's making a lot of money on your transport of Shemitah money. So Kansu Rabbanan Bahud, Rabbanan penalized, and that his wages have a din of Kedusha Shemitah on them. And therefore, that's the difference. So we see two things that have Kedusha's wages on it. One, Yayin Nesach. If you work for a guy carrying Yayin Nesach wine, so your wages didn't like Yayin Nesach, which means that you have to destroy it. He pays you money, you have to get rid of the money. And same thing, if you're a donkey driver and you're doing a long-term haul carrying Shemitah fruit, if you get paid, that money has a din of Kedusha Shvius. And that's what it says. Masnisin, our Mishnah, even if you do a small gig, not like a donkey driver does a big gig, but he gets paid a little bit, Chomer de Yayin Nesach Shani, because of the strictness of Yayin Nesach, we went strict, and that his wages are totally usher. One more piece of Gemara, and then we'll stop. So the Gemara says like this, Ibailo. So we're talking about a person carrying and dealing with Yayin Nesach. So we know he's working for an Avodah Zarah guy, and the Avodah Zarah and the guy, we know for sure that this wine was used for Yayin Nesach, poured for an Avodah Zarah. So now, what happens? Are you allowed to work for a guy who we don't know it's Stam Yainam? We don't know that if he used it for Avodah Zarah or not. Now, listen to this. We know from the previous earlier part of the Masechta that Stam Yainam, you don't know for sure that the guy used it for Avodah Zarah, is also Asa Bahana, but for a different reason. One of the reasons we saw was because we allowed you to, go to a guy's house and deal and have his wine, so that you might have a drink with him, and then you'll marry his daughter. So to keep you away, we asked a person from actually drinking the yayin belonging to a guy. But we went even further to say that it should din asr bahana. You can't benefit from stam yainam of a guy also, because when the Chachamim made a gzeira, they could have made the gzeira that it should be like the pasakum, that you shouldn't be allowed to eat it. But they went further with yain and said even stam yainim, we don't know for sure if the guy used it for avodah zarah. So because we want to make a gzeres chachamim, they made it like yain nesach, that it's asr bahana. So once you know that yain stam yainim, plain wine, and you don't know is asr bahana, the question is, what happens if you work for a guy carrying his stam yainim? If the wages, mahu, what's the din? Do we say, that's the question. Even the Asuri Chama Kid Yayin Eser, since it's Aser Bahano, like Yayin Eser, Schori Nami Aser, then the wages itself are Aser. But there is a difference. Real yayin nesech is, if you have yayin nesech in a room, the whole room, everything is like a tumas mace. Everything in the room is tameh. A stam yainim is only tameh, like it itself is tameh. If you touch it, you become tameh, but it's like a tumas sheretz. So we're going to say, oy dilma maybe hoil the tumas ekil, since it has a lighter tuma to it, afscharinam ekil. So also the wages are permitted. We'll go lighter. We'll go lenient that if you're working stam yainim, you don't know if the guy use this wine for avodah zarah, you're allowed to work with that stam yainim and collect the wage. So you're allowed to work in a goyish wine store. Tashma, come in here. It's not true. You're not allowed to. Now, who gavra? There was this person, the Aga Arba Listan Yainim. He rented his ship to transport Stam Yainim, regular wine, anonymous wine. And he received Yahabalei Chiti Be'agre, and he got as his payment, the Jewish owner of the ship got wheat as his payment. Also the comment of Chizda, and he came to Rav Chizda and says, can I keep this payment? Amalei, so Chizda said, Zil Kaline V'Kavrina, go burn it and bury it. So we see that even with Stam Yainam, the wages and the rental fee is Asar Bahana. Now the Gemara just asks a couple of questions on what Rav Chizda responded. He said, burn it and bury it. Burn the wheat and bury it. V'lei Malei, why didn't Rav Chizda say Badrinu, just, throw it away or spread it out on the field? So the answer is asabulu de kolos. It's going to come to a stumbling block. Somebody else may pick it up, not knowing that this wheat is asar bahana. So the Gemara asked, and one Rav Chizda says vilik linu vilivadrinu, that he should burn it, make it into ashes, and then spread it on the field. Answers the Gemara, dilma mazablubu. Maybe somebody's going to use it for fertilizer. He's going to see this burnt wheat on the field, these ashes, so he'll pick it up and use it for his field to use it as fertilizer. And he's benefiting from something that's also banal. So then the Gemara asks, then just bury the wheat as is. Don't, why do you have to burn it? Don't we learn by other things that are asa bahana? Echad evan shniskaba, the stones that were used to stone a Jew who's chayiv skila. The echad eight shnitla olive, and the stone and the tree that we hung him on after he got the Bezdin stoned him. They hung him up for a half a minute. So that wood that they hang the dead body up, the echad sayev shnergboy, or the knife that they use to kill the person that's chayiv hereg. The echad suda shnechnboy, whether the cloth that they used to choke the person. So anything that was used to kill a Jew who's chayev misas Bezdin, the item itself that was used to kill the person, kulam nikbarim imay, they just bury the knife as is, they bury the wood as is, or the stone as is, because it's asar bahana. So we see that if something's asar bahana, you don't have to burn it first, turn it into ashes, and then bury it. You could just bury it straight away. So the question is, this wheat that this person got for wages for dealing with stam yainim, why did Rav Chizda tell him that you have to burn it first and then bury it? And says the Gemara, finally, Hasam the Kokavre Beidina Muchamilsa the Haruge Bezdininu. Over there, when they bury those items that belong to Bezdin, so they're burying those items in a Bezdin-based cemetery. So Muchamilsa the Haruge Bezdin. Everybody knows that's these items that you're going to dig up from that cemetery are asabana because they were used by Bezdin and they were buried there because they're asabana. Hacha over here, if a guy is just going to bury wheat, loy muchacha milsi, it's not proven. It's not. There's no indication that it's asabana. And a guy who's going to dig up that wheat that you buried, he's going to say to himself, Emma, he's going to say, Enosh Ganav, somebody stole this wheat, V'aiseh, and brought it here, and cover hacha and buried here, so I could keep this wheat. So therefore, Rav Chizda advised that you should burn the wheat and then bury it. Okay, we're going to start the story of the Bei Rabbi Yanai tomorrow.